the world of the faith is sad. She was the heart and voice of the Mississippi Mass Choir, Mama Mosie Burks. She died at the age of 92. But what happened in her last days and during the service at her funeral? Even the strongest sounds in gospel music were shaking. Stay tuned, because this goodbye was different from anything we've seen before. Some sounds in gospel music have been around for a long time and are remembered by many generations. Mama Mosie Burks had one of those rare voices that could move people to tears. Her sound raised millions of people and shook every church she went into. But her voice is no longer heard. When Mosie Burks died at the age of 92, he left behind not only a large body of music, but also a deep spiritual mark that will last forever. But what really happened in the days before she died? How did the Mississippi Mass Choir say their last goodbyes? She helped the group become a world gospel force. How did something at her funeral make even the toughest people cry? We're going to talk about Mama Mosie Burks' life, death, and unforgettable goodbye in this video. We'll share stories that fans never heard, honor the woman behind the voice, and take you inside the emotional moments of her final tribute. You have no idea who showed up. What was heard will blow your mind. Your last message to the world is something you won't want to miss. This is where it gets strong. This is where her real impact starts. We need to honor her life before we mourn her death. Because Mosie Burks, who everyone loved and called Mama Mosie, wasn't just a musician. As a live testimony wrapped in joy, praise, and the fire-filled gospel, she was a vessel. Mosie Burks was born in 1931 in the middle of Mississippi. He came from a poor family. She grew up in a big family with deep ties to the Black church. She learned early on that her voice wasn't just a gift. There was something about it that could bring grown men to their knees and make the church benches shake with the sound of freedom. She sang even when she was in pain or poor or during the civil rights fight. Her voice helped her stay strong. She sang in a small church choir and was a star there before she joined a big choir. On Sunday mornings, she led soulful hymns that touched heaven. But the world didn't really meet her until the Mississippi Mass Choir called in the late 1980s. Frank Williams put together the choir, and Mosie Burks quickly became one of its most famous and loved lead singers. She put on exciting shows. She did more than sing the message. She lived it. Mama Mosie had a powerful, joyful faith that could light up arenas, whether she was singing "When I Rose This Morning" or "God's Been Good to Me."
For as long as she could remember, Mosie never slowed down. In her 80s and early 90s, she still taught, preached, and performed. She always wore a hat with a big smile on it, and her voice was always full of fire. She didn't want to be famous. It went after her. She didn't sing to get cheers. She sang to make God look good. That's why her death was sad for more than just church music. People, the society, and the church all lost something. What did she do in the last few months of her life? How did she die at the age of 92? What did people in the church world think behind the scenes? That's where the story gets more interesting. From the outside, Mama Mosie Burks looked like she could do no wrong. Her loud voice, lively personality, and trademark church hats made it seem like time couldn't affect her. And it didn't in a lot of ways. She sang with the Mississippi Mass Choir well into her 90s, going on trips for gospel events and acting like she was still 30 at church anniversaries. But there was a quiet fight going on behind the beautiful smile and powerful voice. People who were close to the family say that Mama Mosie's body started to slow down in her later years, not her spirit. She was said to be having health problems linked to getting older, like tiredness and joint pain, and had quietly cut back on long trips. She didn't want to complain, though. People came to her front door, among others, to hear her sing one more time. They were neighbors, visitors, and caregivers. Even when she couldn't walk very far, she'd sit in a chair and sing. She'd lift one hand and close her eyes, and it felt like God was in the room, said a church member from Jackson, Mississippi. When she was weak, she still helped others feel stronger while quietly getting ready for her departure. Close friends say she talked a lot about getting her spiritual and physical house in order. She wasn't afraid of death. In fact, she looked forward to it because it meant she would be back with the father she had sung about all her life. During her last few months, she was reportedly surrounded by family, church leaders, and choir members who prayed with her, sang with her, and just sat with her. There were no big goodbyes, social media posts, or hospital photos, just quiet strength and a peaceful retreat into the arms of her faith. A few weeks before she died, Mosie asked choir members to sing near the cross. As they harmonized in the living room, she reportedly joined in with a weak voice and tears in her eyes. After the last amen, she whispered, "That's how I want to go out, with a song in my soul." It was like she knew it was time. She died peacefully, surrounded by love, covered in prayer, and held by the spirit that carried her through 92 amazing years. There was no fuss or headlines, just a quiet exit for a heavenly soul. The official statement came days later, from the Mississippi Mass Choir. "We broke the sad news that our beloved Mosie Burks had passed away. She was our mother, our sister in Christ, and the heartbeat of our ministry. She fought the good fight, kept the faith, and now she's earned her crown." The gospel community was devastated. Legends like Shirley Caesar, Kirk Franklin, Donnie McClurkin, and Yolanda Adams sent tributes. Many of them had grown up watching her, singing with her, or being blessed by her ministry. When Mama Mosie Burks' funeral day came, what happened inside that church shook the pews and touched the heavens. What started as a celebration of life turned into something supernatural that no one saw coming. Jackson, Mississippi had never seen anything like it. It was clear from the start that this wasn't going to be a normal funeral. It would be a celebration of life, but it would also be a spiritual earthquake. People who loved gospel music went to church, sang in choirs, and even people from out of state came to Jackson to honor the woman whose voice had helped them through the worst times of their lives. The service took place at New Hope Baptist Church, which has a huge sanctuary that is usually used for statewide church conventions. But that day, it was holy ground. The church was packed with people hours before the service started. Hundreds stood outside, some holding signs and fans, and many crying before a word was spoken. Inside, Mosie's white and gold casket was at the front, surrounded by tall arrangements of white lilies, roses, and magnolia. Her signature church hat was placed next to it, a simple reminder of how elegant and graceful she was. But it was the music that made the service feel like heaven. As the Mississippi Mass Choir took their place, wiping their eyes and dressed in flowing robes, the room fell silent. Then, without playing a note, the choir started to sing, "When I Rose This Morning." As soon as their voices hit the air, the crowd went wild, shouting praise and crying at the same time. Choir members say it felt like Mosie was right there with them, singing with them. Some of them even broke down in the middle of the song. It was like every note was a gift to her memory. One witness said, "It wasn't just a funeral, it was an outpouring of the Holy Spirit. I've never felt a presence so thick in the air. It was like heaven had cracked open just a little." Gospel legends took turns honoring her life. Shirley Caesar gave a moving speech in which she called Mosie a brave soldier who never gave up. Pastor Marvin Sapp's honor, Mama Mosie didn't just sing gospel, moved everyone to tears. She was great. Her voice was Bible verse wrapped in song. The most moving part, though, was a video collage, a collection of her most powerful performances, interviews, and behind-the-scenes moments. As her voice filled the room one last time, clips played of her dancing, testifying, laughing, and hugging fans. Some people in the audience sobbed openly, while others clapped along with her performances as if they were live. The choir then did something unexpected to end the service. Everyone in the room was asked to stand and sing Mosie's favorite hymn, "I'll Fly Away." Voices rose in unison, and people swayed, shouted, clapped, and some danced in the aisles. It was no longer just a funeral. It was a homegoing celebration, the kind you only hear about but rarely experience. As the choir sang the last note, the crowd gave them a standing ovation, not for performance, but for a life well lived. For a woman who carried the gospel on her back, gave her all to ministry, and died the same way she lived in victory. Outside the church, A white horse-drawn carriage was waiting to take her body to its final resting place. Hundreds of people stood in the streets, some singing and others holding candles in silence. An event that went beyond fame, religion, and background. But what's even more powerful than Mosie's funeral is the story she left behind. This story isn't over by a long shot. Her voice may be silent, but her impact is still felt in the gospel world today. When someone like Mosie Burks dies, the loss is felt across generations. She didn't just lead songs, she led souls. And her legacy is so ingrained in the gospel community that she ministers even after she's died. To understand her impact, you have to look beyond the stage. Yes, Mosie was a lead singer with the Mississippi Mass Choir, which became a cult favorite. But Mosie was also a link between old and new. She sang new and old hymns, as well as modern praise songs. And she made it all feel connected. Her versions of songs like I'm Not Tired Yet, When I Rose This Morning, and Your Grace and Mercy did more than just entertain. They changed people. In fact, many pastors and worship leaders have said that whole altar calls would start when Mosie opened her mouth to sing. When Mosie Burks led worship, it didn't matter if you were young or old, Baptist or Pentecostal, broken or whole. You felt like God was speaking directly to you, said a church leader. Gospel singers now follow her style of praise, which is full of joy, reverence, spontaneity, and a deep link with the soul. She didn't practice how she felt. She gave from the heart in everything she did. That's why her words could be heard in prisons, hospitals, and churches around the world, through speakers and screens. But she left behind more than just songs. It has to do with religion, culture, and community. One spiritual gift. Mosie's dedication was never about how well he did. Prayer, humility, and work were important parts of her life. She helped younger choir members, prayed for Christians who were having a hard time, and ministered just as strongly behind the scenes as she did in front of thousands. 2. A culture history. Mosie's path was a quiet revolution. She was a black woman from Mississippi who became famous all over the world. She kept alive the rich history of Southern gospel, folk spirituals, and hand-clapping, foot-stomping church music that goes all the way back to slavery. With grace and honor, she carried that sound forward. 3. A legacy for the neighborhood. Mosie had always been close to her roots. Even though she was famous, she was still easy to talk to. She only needed a microphone and an open heart. She helped out with revivals, volunteered, and supported local causes in Jackson and all over Mississippi. People knew her, not just her voice. The next-door neighbor, the mother figure, the teacher. 4. Across generations. A lot of younger gospel acts look up to her. Singers like Tamila Mann, Leandria Johnson, and even Jonathan McCreers have talked about how important gospel pioneers like Mosie were to them in interviews. Her skill and energy in leading praise and worship have made her an example for new artists who want to find a balance between being real and being great. Now that the world is getting over her death, there is a new wave of respect. Her work is back on the charts. The number of streamers has gone up. Records from the past are being passed around like holy items. Whole churches have set aside whole Sundays to honor her memory. There are already plans for tribute shows, and gospel networks are putting together full specials about her life and work. But this may be the most telling sign of how long her influence will last. These days, people don't just listen to Mosie songs, they feel them again. They can heal, grieve, and praise her songs, even when she's not there. That might be the point too, since Mosie Burks never wanted praise. She wished everyone could find God. Every note she played was a prayer, and every show was an offering. Now, that gift lives on in every voice she touched, every soul she inspired, and every heart that still hears her sing, even when it's quiet. But you need to see one more thing, because in her last word to the world, which she recorded a few weeks before she died, Mosie said goodbye in a way that is still being heard today. She kept alive the rich history of Southern gospel, folk spirituals, and hand-clapping, foot-stomping church music that goes all the way back to slavery. With grace and honor, she carried that sound forward. 3. A legacy for the neighborhood. Mosie had always been close to her roots. Even though she was famous, she was still easy to talk to. She only needed a microphone and an open heart. She helped out with revivals, volunteered, and supported local causes in Jackson and all over Mississippi. People knew her, not just her voice. The next door neighbor, the mother figure, the teacher. 4. Across generations. A lot of younger gospel acts look up to her. Singers like Tamila Mann, Leandria Johnson, and even Jonathan McRears have talked about how important gospel pioneers like Mosie were to them in interviews. Her skill and energy in leading praise and worship have made her an example for new artists who want to find a balance between being real and being great. Now that the world is getting over her death, there is a new wave of respect. Her work is back on the charts. The number of streamers has gone up. Records from the past are being passed around like holy items. Whole churches have set aside whole Sundays to honor her memory. There are already plans for tribute shows, and gospel networks are putting together full specials about her life and work. But this may be the most telling sign of how long her influence will last. These days, people don't just listen to Mosie songs, they feel them again. They can heal, grieve, and praise her songs, even when she's not there. That might be the point too, since Mosie Burks never wanted praise. She wished everyone could find God. Every note she played was a prayer, and every show was an offering. Now, that gift lives on in every voice she touched, every soul she inspired, and every heart that still hears her sing, even when it's quiet. But you need to see one more thing, because in her last word to the world, which she recorded a few weeks before she died, Mosie said goodbye, in a way that is still being heard today. The most powerful words come to us when we least expect them. Mama Mosie Burks shared a message with her church family in the last few weeks of her life that would become her unofficial goodbye to the world. Even though her health was getting worse and she didn't want to be seen by many people. It wasn't planned. The event wasn't shown on TV. It was pure, quiet, and from the heart.